welcome back to my channel. And if you're new, hello. I make videos every week about style, travel, and books. And for today I have something pretty good. Today is the day that I start a new series on my channel, and it's called Share or Shelve. I'm super excited about it because I love to read, and I would love to share some of the books that I've liked with you guys, and hopefully this comment section becomes a venue for you guys to also talk about the books if you've read them and suggest new books for me to read, because I'm always on the lookout for good books. The books I'll be reviewing today are Chelsea Girls by Eileen Myles and The Girls by Emma Cline. Oh yeah. I wish I had the paperback, the one that they have in Britain, I think, because the cover is so cool. I'll insert a picture here. I'm sure you guys have all seen it. They haven't released it in the US, or I haven't seen it anywhere anyways. Okay, so the first book that I'm going to talk about is Chelsea Girls. I was not actually familiar at all with Eileen Myles before I got this book, and really the reason I got it was because it was on display at Brookline Booksmith. Shout out, that's one of my favorite bookstores. If you live in Boston, oh my god, you have to go there. The staff is really friendly and knowledgeable, and they have a lot of good books. And their used section is amazing. I didn't get this in the used section though. I bought it for full price because I love them so much. Anyway, okay, so the reason I got this book was because of the cover. I was drawn to her face. She was a pretty good looking woman in her 20s. And when you read the book, you'll learn that this photo was actually taken by Robert Mapplethorpe. If you guys have read Just Kids by Patti Smith, I suggest you should if you haven't read it. But if you have read it, you'll know who Robert Mapplethorpe is. He was an artist and photographer. So the fact that Eileen Myles has a photo by him is pretty amazing. So Chelsea Girls was actually published originally in 1994, and then it went out of print. And this is the reprint of the book, and I think it actually looks a lot better than the original. Eileen Myles is most known for her poetry. Not most known to me though, because like I said earlier, I wasn't actually familiar with her until I read this book. So Chelsea Girls is considered an autobiographical novel. I think what that means is majority of it is based on her actual life and some of it is fictionalized. Honestly, when I was reading it, I kind of got the feeling that all of it was true, but I don't know. We'll never know, I guess. The thing I liked most about this novel was that it really felt like you hadn't seen your friend being Eileen, in a really long time, and you guys went to grab coffee and just talked for hours. Well, it would be a one-sided conversation, obviously, because she's the only one doing the talking. But it felt like you were listening to a friend tell you like all the stuff that's happened to her since the last time you saw her. The reason I say that is because the timeline in the book jumps from different years. It covers mostly her life in the 70s and the 80s. I took a bunch of trips this summer and I brought both of these with me as plane reading. I was able to read this on the way to San Francisco, so in one plane ride. It took me a while to get into it, into her style of writing, because it is very conversational. And at first I was like, I don't really like it, but also I'm stuck on a plane and I don't really have anything else to do, so I'm gonna keep reading it. And I'm really glad that I stuck with it, because as soon as you get into her tone of voice, it's really absorbing. So the way that she tells these different stories is very fragmented. I think she wrote it as vignettes, I'm not sure how to say it. Whatever, like little, what am I doing? Little snippets, that's the word. So little snippets of like different times in her life. So it does jump back and forth. Talks a lot about her struggles as a writer, what it is to be a female writer, especially a female lesbian writer. Trigger warning for this novel though, she does talk a lot about her past drug use and a lot about her sex life and her alcoholism. So just so you guys know, if you're younger, maybe you want to approach this book with caution. By no means does she glamorize any of that. In fact, I think she does a pretty honest recounting of what it's like to have to deal with those things. So trigger warning for that. But otherwise, I think this is a really, really good read. It's an easy read. I don't know, there's something about her that's like really absorbing. You really feel like she's your friend, and a lot of it is really relatable. I mean, I do write also, so the struggle is real. The struggle is real, especially when she talks about not having any money and like trying to make it. Relatable. Hashtag relatable. Another thing that I really liked about this novel was the fact that the way she writes is so lyrical. I mean, she's a poet, so obviously that would come into play. I'll read you guys a passage that I liked. It's from the chapter where she talks about her trip to Woodstock. Yeah, t-shirt reference. And okay, anyway, so you guys can get a sense of what her writing style is like. Lying on the ground, in the mud, in the rain, I felt like the whole place had been turned into a giant mouth. It was terrifying. The sounds of feet traipsing all night long, up and down the muddy hills, turned into a gigantic rhythm like a mouth smacking its lips continually. I had been smoking and drinking all day, so this hallucination was what my night had become. I whispered to Paul, who was lying next to me on the wet rag of a blanket we were spending the night on. It sounds like a mouth. He cringed and put his arms around me. A speed freak with spidery, repetitious gestures danced in front of us all night long, kind of a conductor. Way down at the bottom of the hill, the musicians were like dark trees lined in light, wavering in front of our eyes. One more, just one more, uttered some distant part of my will or mental faculty, forcing my attention to stagger along with the entertainment. This is history. So yeah, so good, right? I super enjoyed it. I don't know. I would definitely share this book. This is a share, for sure. Share, share, share. Alright, let's talk about The Girls by Emma Cline. This is the hottest book of summer 2016. It's her first novel, and she already sold the film rights for it. Can you guys believe that? That's insane. It's a cult narrative, I think. Yes, I think so. It's a cult narrative. It's basically about, or no, it's not about, but it's loosely based on the Manson murders. I don't know about you guys, but I had zero knowledge of the Manson murders before I picked this book up. I mean, I'd heard about it casually, but I still don't know any of the details. I'm not really that into cults or murders. I don't think anyone in their right mind is into murders. But I mean, it's not a thing I'm interested in. The reason I got The Girls was because everyone kept raving about it. I didn't really have an idea what it was about. I just knew that it was on all my social media feeds, Twitter, Instagram, and I figured, you know what? It's set in the same time period. That's actually what sold it for me, not gonna lie. It's set in the 60s, and I had to get it because I'm in that like 60s genre. No, I'm in that 60s era right now. Everything I've been reading has been set in either the 60s or the 70s. For some reason, it's just what I've been gravitating towards. So The Girls by Emma Cline. Before I talk about it, I need to put a trigger warning for this book because it's really heavy. The subject matter is definitely not something to be taken lightly. As you guys know, there is murder in this book. There is also violence and rape. So if those are not the kinds of things that you want to be reading about, maybe shelve this for now or forever and just avoid it. So I have this book on my Kindle, mostly because if I'm not sure whether or not I'm gonna like a book, I either borrow it from the library as an ebook and put it on my Kindle, or I get it as an ebook, and then if I really like it, that's when I get a paperback copy. Now, I guess that's kind of telling of how I felt about this book. I didn't hate it, but it's not one of my favorites either, and I'll tell you why. So the book is mainly character driven. There are murders that take place in the book, but they kind of take a back burner to the character's story. It's mostly about how they develop and less about the actual murders. There are three characters who have fairly large roles in the book. The first one is Evie Boyd. She's the protagonist. We see her in two ways throughout the book. The first is as a 14-year-old teenager. That's when she kind of joins the cult. The second is her as an adult. I think as she's like 50, in her 50s or 60s. So the book is told in a dual perspective, but I'll talk more about that later. The second character is Suzanne. She is the girl who draws Evie into the cult. She kind of is also this point of fixation for Evie. Evie kind of not really idolizes, but is infatuated with her. And then the last character is Russell. He sort of plays the Charles Manson figure. He's not a main character in the book, but his presence is always overarching throughout the whole story. So the book is set in the summer of 1969. Yeah. Another t-shirt reference. What? Okay. Anyway. I don't know why I did that. It's ridiculous. Anyway, okay. Meet Evie at a turning point in her life. She's 14 years old. She's an adolescent, and like any adolescent teenage girl, she wants to be accepted. And right now, she doesn't feel like she is. She feels kind of out of place because her parents are divorced. She's sitting in the park thinking about her life when she suddenly spots Suzanne and some other girls. And these girls are everything that she wants to be. They seem confident, self-assured. They seem like they're a tight group of friends, and Evie instantly becomes enamored by them, and she wants to find out everything she can. As the story goes on, we follow Evie as she gets introduced into the cult, and I think Emma Cline does a really good job with pacing because the story follows the same rhythm as Evie's experiences. So as she's like getting absorbed into the cult, the pacing of the novel feels like a whirlwind. Everything happens so fast, and then slowly as the story progresses and you see the decline of the ranch and the cult where she's staying at, the narrative also breaks down. So more than the murders, I think the story is largely about acceptance. The narrative focuses more on Evie and her trying to situate herself in the world and try to figure out who exactly she is as a person, what she believes in, what line she's willing to cross. And I think Emma Cline does a really good job of doing that by having the juxtaposition of younger Evie and older Evie. I think Emma Cline does a really good job with the dual perspective because you're able to experience being in the cult and the ranch as a teenager. I think as a teenager you see most things as either black or white. Everything seems so grandiose and glamorous when you're in it, and even if it's not, you can't really distance yourself from the experience. You're too absorbed in it, and you just don't have the capacity to see beyond what's happening to you at that moment. The nice thing with the juxtaposition of having older Evie's perspective is you really are able to see how she contextualizes that whole experience. Like I said earlier, I also read this on the plane, so it's a fairly quick read. Well, Emma Cline has a really lyrical way of writing. I definitely enjoyed her writing style. I'm just gonna read a couple of passages for you guys so you can get a taste of her writing. She was lost in that deep and certain sense that there was nothing beyond her own experience, as if there were only one way things could go, the years leading you down a corridor to the room where your inevitable self waited, embryonic, ready to be revealed. How sad it was to realize that sometimes you never got there, that sometimes you lived a whole life skittering across the surface as the years passed, unblessed. I mean, whoa. And then the other one was, you wanted things and you couldn't help it, because there was only your life, only yourself to wake up with, and how could you ever tell yourself that what you wanted was wrong? So the pros of this book, it's an easy read. If you're into cults, cult culture, this would do it for you. If you're into coming of age stories, this is also a really good book. Emma Cline was really great at writing from the perspective of a teenage girl, and even surprisingly as an older woman, because I think Emma Cline is young. She's in her 20s, but she was able to write older Evie quite convincingly. I think most of the characters in this book are properly fleshed out. Even the secondary characters, you kind of get a sense of who they are as people. So that I really like. Cons of this book, the subject matter is quite heavy. It took me a while to be able to shake it off after reading it. I guess that could also be a pro, because Emma Cline did a really good job of writing to the point that I got so absorbed into the book and into that world and that mindset. One con of the book, I felt, at least for me, was it wasn't quite what I was expecting. Even though I went into the book not knowing much about it and not knowing much about the Manson murders, I was thinking more that it would be more plot driven versus character driven. So for me, that was a slight con. Other than that, I think it's a pretty good book. I would share it to people who I know enjoy cult narratives, cult culture. I would probably personally shelve it. I'm glad I read it, but I don't need to read it again. Even though I'm not going to read this book again, I am really interested to see what Emma Cline comes out with next, because a lot of this novel is based on things that actually happened. So the narrative, I'm sure she drew from news reports, nonfiction written about it. So I'm curious to see how she would fare writing a narrative that's completely her own. Not to discount this book at all, she did such a good job at writing it, especially creating a character that wasn't actually one of the girls involved in the murder. Evie is totally fictional, so I think she did a really good job with that. So I'm curious to see what she'll come out with next. I hope you guys like that. Please let me know down in the comments what you thought. If you guys have read either of these books, I would love to know your opinion on them. Especially this one, because I think this is quite polarizing. I know some people loved it, some people hated it. So what did you guys think? And also, if you're thinking of reading this, let me know too. And if you guys have any questions that I can answer, also leave them down below in the comments. And oh, book suggestions. Please give me book suggestions, because I'm dying for some new things to read, especially if you guys have good books set in the 50s, the 60s, the 70s. I don't care which genre they are. Please leave them down in the comments. And yeah, I hope you guys like that. And I'll see you in my next video. Please don't forget to hit like if you like this. And please subscribe so that you guys don't miss any future share or shelves. Bye!